Good morning and welcome to this chapel service. It is good to come together in worship, thankful for this new day to spend with one another. Let us come in a spirit of gratitude. To be grateful is to recognize the love of God in everything that we have been given. And God has given us everything. Every breath we draw is a gift of God. Every moment of existence is a grace. A spirit of gratitude takes nothing for granted, is never unresponsive, is constantly awakening to new wonders. And so I invite you to continue into this semester at Bethany in deep appreciation for opportunities to learn, for gifted teachers and students who inspire us, for challenges and growth in community, and for all these blessings, unexpected mostly, that come our way. Let us worship God, who is the giver of all that is good. Please join me for an adaptation of a prayer by Thomas Merton. It's printed as a litany in your bulletin. God, sometimes we have no idea where we are going. We cannot know for certain where it will end. And the fact that we think that we are following your will often does not mean that we actually are doing so. And we pray to have that desire in all that we do. We will not fear, for you are with us. Let us sing together hymn number 545, Be Thou My Vision. Our readings for today lay out behaviors that are pleasing to God and also those that are unacceptable. First, these words from Psalm 15, verses 1 to 5. O Lord, who may abide in your tent? Who may dwell on your holy hill? Those who walk blamelessly and do what is right and speak the truth from their heart, who do not slander with their tongue and do no evil to their friends or heap shame upon their neighbors, in whose eyes the wicked are despised, but who honor those who fear the Lord, and who stand by their oath even to their hurt, who do not lend money at interest, and do not take a bribe against the innocent. Those who do these things shall never be moved. And from Jeremiah 22, verses 11 to 17, again from the New Revised Standard Version. For thus says the Lord concerning Shallum, son of Josiah of Judea, who succeeded his father Josiah and who went away from this place. He shall return here no more, but in the place where they have carried him captive, he shall die, and he shall never see this land again. Woe to him who builds his house by unrighteousness and his upper rooms by injustice, who makes his neighbors work for nothing and who does not give them their wages, who says, I will build myself a spacious house with large upper rooms, and who cuts out windows for it, paneling it with cedar and painting it with vermilion. Are you, Joachim, brother of Shallum, a king because you compete in cedar? Did not your father, Josiah, eat and drink and do justice and righteousness? Then it was well with him. He judged the cause of the poor and needy. Then it was well. Is not this to know me? Says the Lord. But your eyes and heart are only on your dishonest gain, for shedding innocent blood and for practicing oppression and violence.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to bring today's sermon as part of Bethany's Fall Faculty Series on the theme Good Works as a Means of Ecumenical Dialogue. Each year, the student leadership team does a great job picking the series and creating an opportunity to reflect on a topic in a sustained and creative manner. Last week, Nikki Gutierrez outlined key ideas and a helpful starting place for what should be an interesting and diverse set of approaches to the series. In his message, Nikki asked a simple but important question: why do we do this? I enjoy questions, as they help us to dig deeper, ponder, name our assumptions, and help clarify answers for ourselves. And I hope that this sermon will provide an answer, at least one from my perspective, as we will continue to explore this theme together in the coming weeks. So why do we do this? For me, as it should be no surprise to those of you who know me, I would begin to form an answer on the basis of Scripture. And while there are many texts that could be at the top of such a list, the two passages that we just heard, Psalm 15 and Jeremiah 22, provide a distinct point of entry into this conversation, and they have directly shaped my thinking on the topic in particular. Each text asks a theological question and provides a response. The psalmist asks God, who may abide in your tent? And through the prophet, God asks the king rhetorically in Jeremiah 22, is not this to know me? In both cases, the questions ask about who has a positive relationship with God, and the various answers revolve around how we treat others, referencing the topics of justice and righteousness, mishpat and tzedakah in Hebrew, and the appropriate actions that accompany these rich theological categories. In Psalm 15, the author lays out a series of actions and non-actions that illustrate the type of individual allowed into God's presence. I've mentioned in previous sermons how one of the pivotal moments for me in college was a course on the Minor Prophets, which shaped my interest and centered concerns of social justice within my own faith commitments. Well, that same semester, I also took a course on the book of Psalms. Had a lot of Old Testament that year. And I remember vividly my surprise and appreciation for this particular chapter as we examined its theology in detail. In answering the question the psalm poses about entering God's presence, other Hebrew Bible texts would answer with such things as animal sacrifice done correctly, following the prescribed rules, various rituals, reading and obeying the Torah, prayer, and other institutional religious practices. However, none of those practices appear in this psalm. These common practices and means of approaching God or abiding in God's tent, to use the language of the psalm, are all absent in this particular passage. Rather, Psalm 15 situates righteousness, tzedek, in verse 2, as a series of ethical concerns with practical manifestations. In this text, the focus is not on correct belief in religious tenets of faith or on correct observances through sacrifice and rituals. Other texts do that, but not this one. In this self-contained theological proclamation in Psalm 15, we see the promotion of correct actions, especially in the care of others, as the key to living a righteous life in the sight of God. As the psalm currently exists within a collection of prayers and songs to be used in corporate worship in the context of the temple, where those same rituals and other practices regularly occur, their absence here in defining who has access to that very location is probably worth pondering. While mostly expressed as not doing negative things, the psalm enumerates the following good works: speaking truth, not slandering, not doing evil to their friends, not reproaching their neighbors, despising the wicked and honoring those who fear the Lord, standing by their oath even to their hurt, not charging interest on loans, not receiving a bribe against the innocent. And the final verse concludes that those who do these things shall never be moved. Now, this list revolves around how we treat our friends and our community members, including the appropriate use of power and money. It also addresses the importance of our words. The line about keeping one's oath even to their hurt has always been one that has stood out to me. While we still value this notion in a largely oral culture, giving one's word and keeping one's oath matters. They reflect the individual's integrity and form a bond of trust within the community. The command to keep one's oath appears several times in the Hebrew Bible, but this text goes a step further in its explicit scope. It's not enough to keep your word when it's easy or when it suits the situation, but to do so even when it might cost me something as a result. It's about being true and faithful no matter the situation, and especially when I could take the easier way out so that it won't affect me as much or let me off the hook. And I certainly don't get it always right. But this ideal does matter to me in striving to be a person of integrity as outlined in this biblical text. Our actions matter, and our words, promises, and commitments do too. Jeremiah 22 then moves us from worship at the temple to the prophetic word directed at Judah's kings. In this passage, the prophet Jeremiah condemns the actions of King Jehoiakim, brother to the deposed King Shallum and son of the righteous King Josiah. Shallum has been removed and deported to Babylon. His brother Jehoiakim has now been appointed by that same foreign power as his replacement. Jehoiakim, new to the throne, wants to demonstrate that he is in fact king. So he seeks to make his palace look more kingly. In this, the two brothers are contrasted with their father Josiah. While they have sought to look like a king with fancy and spacious palace, ornate windows, features like red paint that's very expensive and cedar paneling, all the appearance of being a king, Jeremiah rejects that idea, that such extravagance indicates that they are in fact worthy of kingship. The prophet pronounces a woe on those who build their houses by literally not righteousness and not justice. Instead, Jeremiah contrasts their concern to appear as a king by competing in cedar with actually being a king, as expressed by the actions of their father Josiah, who did mishpat and zedekah, justice and righteousness, according to verse 15. These two qualities, mishpat and zedekah, are the expected practices of the idealized ruler throughout the nations of the ancient Near East. Whether in Assyria, Egypt, Babylon, or other nations, true kings claim to do mishpat and zedekah for their subjects. Now, of course, in reality, these claims are often political propaganda. The king does what the king's supposed to do. But this idealized vision, nevertheless, the good king who brings about justice and righteousness for the benefit of the people, that vision remains consistent over multiple centuries and across multiple cultures. In the entire Hebrew Bible, only 3 kings, David, Solomon, and Josiah, are said to have done mishpat and zedekah on behalf of the people. This obviously puts Josiah in a very select company among Israel's good kings. No doubt the failure of Israel's kings to live up to this commonly understood ideal fueled the eschatological hope for a future king who would one day be another type of ruler who would in fact care for the people and accomplish what the previous monarchs could not. In this text, the prophet associates mishpat and zedekah performed by Josiah with judging the cause of the poor and the needy in verse 16, and then asks the rhetorical question by God, "Is not this to know me?" Knowledge of God, relationship with God, is framed as concern for the poor and the marginalized. Working for those without economic or political power is equated with righteousness and religious fidelity. Again, in contrast, Jehoiakim only desires dishonest gain, shedding innocent blood, practicing oppression and violence, according to verse 17. The son did not imitate these noble qualities of his father and is therefore judged as one not truly knowing God. In much the same way that noticing what is not explicitly mentioned in Psalm 15 underscores that Psalm's focus on social justice and concern for those in our community, so too when we recognize what's missing in Jeremiah 22's praise of Josiah. There's no mention at all of what he's probably most famous for, his religious reforms, combined with the rediscovery of the book of the law. The emphasis on Josiah's reign in the book of Kings clearly focuses on his series of religious reforms involving the destruction of the high places, the removal of illicit idols, and those who practice witchcraft. None of this appears in Jeremiah 22 as examples of the good that Josiah did or the ways in which Josiah knew God. Now, this might not be that big of an oddity. Things are left out all the time, except the timeline for Jeremiah's ministry clearly overlaps with Josiah's reforms. That is, historically speaking, Jeremiah was there. He saw them. He witnessed those reforms. Jeremiah could have easily used them as examples of what it means to know God. But such reforms are not what receives attention here. The good Josiah is not contrasted with his evil children on that basis. Rather, Jeremiah commends Josiah for his enacting mishpat and zedekah on the behalf of the poor and the needy. That is what makes him a good king in this chapter. Much like the absence of religious observances in Psalm 15 in favor of good works towards others, so Jeremiah 22 champions good works without mentioning any such religious observances, even when they could have been easily called to mind in the text. This emphasis on good works certainly resonates with the heritage of the Church of the Brethren. The Brethren movement has a long history of service, of working for the benefit of others. One can easily think of Heifer Project, Brethren Disaster Ministries, work camps, and a myriad of local projects undertaken by congregations for the benefit of others within our communities and around the world. We are no strangers to this practice, as the value of service is in many ways a distinctive part of being brethren. Throughout Christian history, different segments of the church have emphasized various ways of following Jesus faithfully. Some have noted that these approaches can be readily grouped into 3 main macro categories: orthodoxy, orthopraxy, and orthopathy. The first, orthodoxy, literally meaning correct praise, concerns correct belief. The second, orthopraxy, concerns correct practice or action. And the third, orthopathy, concerns correct passion or emotion. Christian denominations tend to emphasize at least one of these three as a primary spiritual discipline. So, for example, Roman Catholics and many evangelical groups tend to promote doctrine and belief systems. Pentecostals and charismatics tend to prioritize one's emotions as being oriented or even controlled by the Spirit of God. Mennonites, Quakers, and the Church of the Brethren have championed service and action as a natural demonstration of one's faith. We have tended to agree with James that faith without works is dead. Now, to be clear, I am not placing a value statement on whose primary way is best, but noting that different groups and denominations have emphasized different aspects of faith as appropriate spiritualities, not to the exclusion of the others, but in putting one in a place of privilege. For brethren who also committed to and who continue to affirm non-creedalism, this position has historically and most commonly been orthopraxy, correct practice or action, which often then results in our consistent desire to engage in the service of others. With our emphasis on orthopraxy, we expect something practical, something tangible, something actionable as a result. Such a theological position obviously then directly connects with these two biblical texts that we've examined this morning. Surprise, surprise. Perhaps we could rightly align ourselves with those who may abide in God's presence or those who know God because we have acted in ways that promote mishpat and tzedakah, justice and righteousness, among those in our immediate communities and our world. But as noted in our series theme, how does this discussion of mishpat and tzedakah, of righteousness and justice, relate to ecumenical dialogue? Let me suggest that texts such as these two, Psalm 15 and Jeremiah 22, illustrate the clarity concerning doing mishpat and tzedakah as signs of those who align themselves with God. Regardless of which stream of the Christian tradition in which one locates oneself, whether that is one emphasizing orthodoxy, orthopraxy, or orthopathy, it would seem to me that Christian denominations should be able to come together around basic ethics like those found in Psalm 15 or in the care of the marginalized like those proffered in Jeremiah 22. Put bluntly, Christians of all theological persuasions, I would hope, could agree with such things like speaking truth, not slandering, not doing evil toward their friends, not reproaching their neighbors, keeping their oaths, not charging interest when they lend money, and not taking bribes. Now, unfortunately, I know that my hope does not match reality. Too many Christians try to find loopholes when it comes to each of these ethical principles. This, of course, only then reinforces charges of hypocrisy and skepticism by the world watching to see if Christian ethics actually mean anything in how we treat others. It's an understatement to say that our witness has not always been positive in this regard. These ethics and the failure of many to follow them are again contrasted with the quest for power or the illusion of power and prestige by how we project ourselves to others, just like the kings trying to look like a king. Are we trying to look like those with power, or are we trying to assist those without power and privilege by using what we have in responsible ways? Many Christians celebrate the religious reforms of Josiah from 2 Kings 23, but we should also pay attention to the praise he explicitly receives for acting on behalf of the marginalized in Jeremiah 22. Again, my hope would be that Christian denominations could come together around issues of social justice for those without power. And yet our own infatuation with the temptations of gaining power ourselves, of looking like a king, but not acting like one, is all too real. So if I sound a bit skeptical or uncertain of Christianity's ability to choose ethical treatment of others over personal privilege or promoting social justice over acquiring power, I am, if I'm really honest. The church does not have a good track record when it comes to these issues. But I also have hope. And hope is a dangerous and a wonderful thing. I believe it is possible for Christian denominations to come together, working together for the good of others, to follow these biblical examples, to bring about new realities based on our shared theological conviction that knowing God and being in God's presence requires us to care about others and how our actions or inactions affect them. While we may and do disagree about how we understand a wide range of theological concepts, I believe that we can achieve productive ecumenical dialogue formed on the basis of how God has called us to treat others, in affirming basic ethical principles and our responsibility to advocate for those at the margins of society. As a range of Christian denominations commit to doing such work, I imagine us coming closer together rather than farther apart. While our theological viewpoints may be the cause of some divisions among us, our seeking and enacting mishpat and tzedakah as reflected throughout Scripture should be a source of unity and genuine expressions of Christian love as a productive witness to the world. So, may we individually, corporately, and from across various Christian denominations, coming together in dialogue, be found to do mishpat and tzedakah, justice and righteousness, so that we may remain faithful and steadfast in our relationship with God and with one another, so that our world may indeed flourish as a result. Amen. To go from this place, may the Spirit of God empower us to be faithful, to do mishpat and tzedakah, and to be a faithful witness in our world. Amen.